So I just spent a month with my mom. And I haven't spent that kind of time with her for years now. And it was really nice to see the difference. There was a big difference. And And the difference is that before, I felt as if I was defined by her and she was defined by me somehow. And so the pressure and the burden of being a good enough daughter took its toll over years of trying to be a certain way and feeling like I couldn't just be myself. So this just happens when we believe or sense that we are real, that we exist as a separate being that is definable by these characteristics, and you should be this way and you shouldn't be this way. There are all these rules and guidelines. And ways to be. So, over the apparent lifetime of Suzanne, I'll just speak normally, over the lifetime, my biggest struggle, one of the biggest struggles was with the relationship I had with my mom, because I resembled her the most. The patterns here was very similar to the patterns there. And I was very influenced by control. I was easily controlled by people. I think to a large degree just because there was so much guilt about not pleasing another, not making another so-called happy or doing what they said, because I kind of didn't trust myself. I kind of didn't know what was best for me. I kind of didn't know that they didn't know. So in a way, I guess I kind of trusted that they knew better. Like, it was very unconscious. So there was a lot of just over giving of any sort of I guess you could say power, because I just felt depleted and less than constantly by doing that kind of stuff, by listening to another over myself, over what the body said. And at the time, it felt horrible to do the opposite. It felt horrible to not do what another said or wanted. Yeah, because it would just trigger an immense amount of guilt and shame, I guess. If I had to label the feeling, it felt unbearable discomfort, and feeling like I'm wrong if I don't do what they want. So anyways, it got me into a lot of horrible situations, and I did things that I didn't want to do, and it scarred me. The stories lingered for years and they were buried because I couldn't really admit to them because I thought they defined me, and I thought that I wasn't lovable because of some of the things that happened. So that's how I lived. I lived hiding from the truth in a way, because it was just too much for me to face. And over the years, that softened, and it kind of became less of a big deal, knowing that everyone makes mistakes and that I acted and did those things because of how I felt in that moment. It couldn't have been any other way. It really couldn't have. So as long as the person is still here, meaning the sense of me and space and time, and that things are actually really happening, there is more of a solidity to things because there are objects moving in space and the stories feel very real. The feelings feel more mine. The thoughts feel more real. So over apparent time, it does take its toll on the body, There's an energetic heaviness, and it just loops around the same story or a very similar story over and over and over and over. So then your idea of a person gets a little more solidified, seemingly. And so my idea of my mom was not she was someone that I pushed away. She was someone that I felt a lot of aversion toward at times because there was so much baggage there. There was so much stuff that happened in my life that I associated with how she raised me. And my dad had a part in it too, for sure. But for whatever reason, it was more directed at her. And, everyone's story will vary, so I'm just kind of recalling what seemed to happen here. And so when I had these years of time away from her, there were moments where I felt a lot of anger and resentment and hatred, and there was finally more and more of an allowing of those feelings, and that it wasn't personal, that it was understandable, that it was just feelings. Nothing really right or wrong with them. It's just there if it's there. And there was enough overall natural growth or learning that happened where I didn't need to lash out at anyone. But if speaking the truth happened and an opportunity presented itself somehow, because life just sometimes gives you that opportunity, the truth came out with all of the anger and pain and hurt and suffering, and the truth was expressed finally. And it felt like it was received by her eventually. I mean, there was a period where we didn't speak, and I accepted that she might not be okay with my truth. And it just got to a point where my truth or freedom was more important than trying to manipulate and mold myself into a perfect person, perfect daughter, or more acceptable one. And I just didn't know what that meant anymore, because the concepts and ideas about how I should be just started to not make sense. Even though it could still trigger something in the body, just didn't matter as much anymore. Because there was an ability now to be, you could say, be with the discomfort, but it was just discomfort or just sensation or just energy. It just, didn't have the same meaning anymore. It wasn't as solid. So it could just be. And yeah, I remember there was a moment where it was obvious that there was just hatred. And it was probably geared or directed toward my parents, but really there was just hatred. Hatred for maybe everything, or just pure hatred. And yeah, in a way, there was a beauty in it. That there was a full allowance of just pure hatred. And it was never felt to that extent before, as raw as that, because the person, as long as the person's there, there's all these shields and concepts and ways to be and right and wrong, and you can't go there. But here, it's just, you're so stripped bare, and it just is what it is. Doesn't define anyone. And so it really does feel like after that, maybe bursts of hatred and anger can come up. It's very rare. It's free to come up. It doesn't matter anymore. But it goes quite quickly. It's digested really fast by the body, and no story or idea of a person can be held on to for very long at all. And yeah, so now when I interact with my mom, it's so clean. Like, if there's annoyance, it's kind of expressed and it's gone. And it's not very extreme because there isn't a mountain of suppressed stuff underneath that bubbles up with the anxiety that's related to the moment. It's just anxiety in that moment. That's it. Comes and goes. It's very clean. It doesn't stick to anything. An idea of who my mom is isn't imprinted here. So there's just freedom. It's just what is, and there's no concrete narrative about what's happening. So yeah, things seem to happen very smoothly. And I noticed like there's actions that happen here that might appear as a good daughter. You know, there's a lot of I guess you can say just nice or kind things that have happened this past month, but it just happened. It just wanted to happen, or it felt right, and then it happened, and that was that. And I could sense that she's quite different as well. Like, she's more free. I think there's a freedom for her to be herself too, because there's a lightness I can see there that I can feel as well. And it doesn't seem like she's caught up in the stories as much either. At least from what I can sense. You know, her personality can just flow or fluctuate. So she can joke and then be serious, or cry, or be a little anxious, and it's all fine. Just comes and goes. Yeah, there's quite a beauty. And so it's like the best time I've ever had with my mom. Felt so easy. Even when the body was tired and stuff like that. Everything feels a lot more effortless because there isn't someone here trying to be a certain way, trying to manage and control life and relationships or an outcome. Yeah, but that only came from the absolute complete death of that attachment or that relationship that I thought I had, you know? I thought I owned my mom and I thought she owned me. And without that bondage, it's absolutely, completely, utterly free to be as it is. And I don't want people to feel bad if their relationship isn't like this, because, you know, everyone's just at a different place, has different circumstances, had a different relationship, have different things to process. It's all fine. So there's no real massive care about how it is. There's just a noticing of how it is. So if there was a lot of aversion and anger toward her, let's say, it really wouldn't be a problem. It'd be fine. It'd be what it is. So yeah, the last thing I would ever want to do is make people feel bad about how they feel toward another, because if there's anger, there's just anger. And so what? In certain circumstances or certain situations, like, anger is healthy or a normal response, normal reaction. And if there's an accumulation of a lifetime of those kind of circumstances happening, anger builds up. It has an energetic effect, because as long as there's time and space, until the whole illusion or dream collapses or person collapses, it's going to have an effect. So sometimes it just takes some apparent time to let that come up whenever it does. And so what's wrong with that? So someone I know mentioned something about, you know, someone close to them, someone dear to them, that there's such a difficult circumstance or situation that's going on right now, and, you know, they're in turmoil, and how they perceive their so-called partner is just not in a very nice light. There's a lot of disgust and annoyance in just simple things of how they act, and they've always acted that way, but now it's just annoying and just feels so icky and unacceptable, and like they want them to stop doing what they've always done. So you can't help those feelings, and it completely made sense to me why they would feel that way, because there's just an accumulation of so much, as long as I feel real, because it really does feel like something's actually happening, and whatever is happening is absolute reality. yeah, there's just a solidification of pretty much everything, and accumulation of emotions, because the story feels real, absolutely real. Yeah, so it just made sense to me that that happened. And then it made me reflect on how I am with my mom right now, and just how nothing sticks at all. Nothing at all. It's things are forgotten about so quickly. Nothing is held on to. And I don't see her as a person. I don't see her as this thing with these certain characteristics and traits. I can't mentally compartmentalize her like that anymore. The mind is not used in that way, or yeah, the energy to narrate things, it just isn't there anymore naturally. So it really does feel like things just happen and that's it. And this whole so-called month that I'm referring to, it, I don't know, it's gone. It really is gone. And there's just this. So yeah, nothing is held on to. Nothing is real. Nothing is energetically accumulating in the body. But another thing that becomes obvious is like the biological natural effects of things. So I can still feel energetically in the body just the effects of being around someone for a month, because it does have its effects. It's different from if you're completely alone. And it's not seen as a problem or anything, but I could feel and sense in the body that there's a bit of buzzing. It feels like thick air. Yeah, it's not good or bad. It just is what it is. And it's kind of a niceness to it. But usually when I'm completely alone, yeah, it's just different. You know, so there are these little changes and differences, and but it just feels like everything underneath it all, it has no ground, you know. It's all empty. It's all doesn't have meaning, and nothing has a point to it. It's all very free, or it just is what it is. It's very neutral. I mean, all these words like don't get to it. It doesn't touch it. Doesn't really describe it. Basically, it's there and it isn't. And so this isn't something to mimic or get to. It's sort of unraveling, or a falling away of the energetic effects of solidity, of realness. And then this is just revealed.